Okay, on to our next bit of attachment. So we've looked at introduction, so what makes or how different are caregiver and infant interactions. We've looked at different stages of attachment. Is it a stage theory? Does it happen gradually over months, over years, or is it something that's biological? Now we have to look at quite an interesting section of attachment, looking at how we can apply, looking at animals, can we apply that to human interaction and human attachment? So how can studies into animal attachment give us quite an insight or a good insight into human bonds? We've got two key bits of research that we need to look at here, which is looking at Lorenz and how he looked at geese and how they imprint, and Harlow's looking at his pretty cruel experiments with monkeys into how they attach. So two bits of research for AO1 that we need to know, evaluate them and try and relate them to human attachment. So when we say about animal studies, we haven't come across them much. We've looked at them in behaviourists with Pavlov, but what actually are they? So when we're looking at non-humans, we're seeing if we can apply it cross species. So quite a lot of the time, it's research using dogs, monkeys, rats, but they're quite difficult to generalise. So that's probably one of the key bits of evaluation you can take from this, is that how can we use monkeys to try and generalise that to humans. It's quite quicker and it's cheaper to carry it out on animals, but maybe there's a lot of ethical issues that we need to consider as well. So our first bit of research is Lorenz, looking at this idea of imprinting. So if you've watched Twilight, and you'll remember that Jacob imprinted on Edward's child, it's very similar to this with geese. So a YouTube video to go and have a watch there, which is basically his research. But he basically had a group of geese and he kept them in an incubator, and the first thing they saw was him. And they basically followed him around everywhere he went. He became their primary caregiver, not the geese's mum, basically. So have a watch of that. There's some questions there to answer for this. Remember, we can use any research method to evaluate any bit of study that we look at. So what research methods used, what is the IV, what is the DV, what is the experimental design, what impact does the IV have on the DV, how well can we apply it to humans, what does Lorenz mean by sexual imprinting, so you'll have a look at that on the video, and then can you think of any examples where, you know, in animals or humans, where you think this might happen. Don't use Twilight because it's not real. Okay, let's have a watch that and answer those questions. The answers are on the slide, but like I said a couple of lessons ago, don't just look at the answers. Try your best to work it out so that you are actually testing yourself and not just trying to rote learn information, because nothing will go in. Okay, so watch that first and then have a look and compare your answers to these. So Lorenz's research looking at imprinting, looking at geese. Harlow, something very different. So one of the most discussed bit of research in attachment for its ethical issues. Just because they're monkeys, can we treat them in this way? Okay, it's pretty horrendous. So again, YouTube video, have a look at that and watch it. It is quite traumatic, it's quite distressing. And then some questions to answer there. So if I give you a brief summary after you've watched the video. Harlow's research with monkeys, he took them away from their mum and he put them in a cage on their own with a cloth monkey and with a wire monkey. The cloth monkey provided comfort and the wire monkey provided food. So if we were thinking about what we know so far, potentially we'd imagine that they go to the food. They go to the wire monkey because they want that food, they want that reinforcement. But actually, all of the monkeys went for comfort. So they went to this monkey that was just covered in a bit of cloth because they wanted the support, they wanted the comfort from that mother. So it had quite an interesting bit of interesting results. So it's like we can't really say that we attach due to like food. So learning theory would say that we attach to our caregivers because they provide us with food and we learn that response. Whereas here, they're going for comfort. So surely there must be something different that we need to embed our attachment. So have a watch of that. Make some notes on his research, all about AO1. all the A1, then compare your answers. What is interesting with animal studies, it's quite a weak area that people perform quite poorly on, but it's quite simple in the fact that it's just trying to apply animal research to humans. So one thing I would stress that you do, once you've got your notes on Harlow and Lorenz, is do a comparison. So do it as a Venn diagram. What is similar, what is different between Lorenz and with Harlow? So you can think about some of the methodology they've used, the design, the sample, the ethics, that would be very similar. And spread it out. So put it on a big bit of A3 or a whole bit of A4 and do some comparison, because that's quite an easy question that could come up. It hasn't come up before, so it's something that maybe to consider. You know, with the exams this year, well, there are no exams this year, we have to start thinking about, you know, what's going to be put in place or what questions haven't come up for you guys next year. Okay, then. When it comes to evaluation, then, they're quite similar. So have a look at these questions. So at the red are some of the easier questions, to the middle are quite difficult, and then the one at the top is probably the hardest question. So have a look through and do some evaluation on that. What would you pick out? Is there any additional research? Have we got ecological validity? Can we apply the findings elsewhere? Does it account for individual differences? You know, what's the strength and weakness of the methodology? So work through those questions in response to Harlow and Lorenz, full sentences. And then once you've done that, have a look at, in the book, the actual AO3 bits that you can pull out, put them into peel paragraphs, and then go from there. The key bits that we're going to pick out here are ethical issues, issues with generalisation, and some control issues as well. So like, how do we know that all of the extraneous variables were controlled for in Lorenz's research? You know, how do we know they haven't imprinted on something else beforehand? Then once you've got that, I would urge you to answer this question. So describe and evaluate animal studies of attachment. Plan it first. Give yourself 20 to 25 minutes. Write it. You can always send it to me and I'll give you some feedback. But this area is where a lot of students do struggle, because they mix up Harlow and Lorenz, or they forget all of the AO3. So a good bit of practice for this section. Okay.